The alien ship moved slowly through the dark space near the Helios Nebula. Its name was Contemplation of Stars, and it belonged to a race called the Zephyrians. These aliens looked like tall, thin creatures with blue skin and large black eyes. They had long fingers that could work with the most delicate tools. Science Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his ship. He was excited about their mission today. The Zephyrians loved to learn about other races in the galaxy. They studied everyone they met. It was their greatest joy to discover new things about how different species lived and thought. "Commander," said his assistant, a younger Zephyrian named Colvin, "we are picking up a large metal object ahead." Veltar moved to the main screen. His black eyes grew wider when he saw what waited for them. A massive ship floated in the darkness. It was bigger than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. The ship was dark gray with sharp edges. Strange symbols were painted on its side in white letters. USS Dakota. "It is a human vessel," whispered another crew member named Silara. Her voice shook with fear. "We should leave this place now." But Veltar felt no fear. He felt wonder. Humans were one of the most mysterious races in the galaxy. Other aliens spoke about them in quiet voices. Some said humans were dangerous. Others said they were Deathworlders who came from a planet so terrible that it made them into something frightening. Veltar did not believe these stories. How could any race be so different from his peaceful people? The Zephyrians had never hurt anyone. They only wanted to learn and understand. Surely the humans would be the same way deep down. "This is perfect," Veltar said with excitement. "We can study them up close. Think of what we might learn about these mysterious Deathworlders." Silara moved closer to her commander. "The stories say they do not like being watched or studied. Many ships have gone missing after getting too close to human space." "Stories and rumors," Veltar said, waving his long hand. "We are scientists. We deal in facts, not fear." He turned to his scanning officer. "Begin a full biological and technological scan of their vessel. I want to know everything about them. How they live, what they eat, how their bodies work. Use our most powerful scanners." The scanning officer looked worried. "Commander, perhaps we should try to talk to them first. Ask for permission." "No," Veltar said firmly. "If we ask, they might say no. Then we learn nothing. Our stealth systems are the best in the galaxy. They will never know we are here." Inside the human warship USS Dakota, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair. He was a man of 40 years, with short brown hair and hard green eyes. Scars on his face told stories of many battles. His uniform was clean and pressed, but his hands were rough from years of military service. The bridge around him was quiet. His crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. These were not new soldiers. They were veterans who had fought in wars across the galaxy. They knew their jobs well. Lisa Grant stood at the tactical station. She was a tall woman with red hair pulled back tight. Her fingers moved over the weapon controls like a musician playing an instrument. She had destroyed more enemy ships than most people had ever seen. Near the back of the bridge, Tony Blake worked at the engineering station. He was a big man with thick arms and a beard. His job was to keep all the ship's systems running, but Tony knew things about the Dakota that would terrify most aliens. This ship carried weapons that could crack planets in half. Amy Rodriguez sat at the communications station. She was young, but skilled at her job. Her equipment could hear whispers from across a solar system. Nothing escaped her attention when she was listening to the void of space. Carl Johnson managed the weapons. He was a quiet man who smiled rarely. But when enemies threatened his ship, Carl became something terrible. His weapons could destroy fleets of enemy vessels in minutes. Captain Morrison looked out at the stars through the main screen. The Helios Nebula spread out before them like a colorful cloud. It was beautiful, but Morrison was not here to enjoy the view. The Dakota was on patrol, watching for threats to human space. "Captain," Amy said from her station, I am picking up something strange. Morrison turned his head toward her. What kind of strange? Energy readings from somewhere close by, but I cannot see any ships on our sensors. Morrison's eyes narrowed. In his 20 years of military service, he had learned to trust strange feelings. Something was wrong here. Run a deep scan, he ordered. Check for stealth ships. At that exact moment, the Zephyrian scanners reached out from their hidden ship. Invisible beams of energy passed through the Dakota's hull. They searched through every room and corridor. They scanned every human on board, reading their biological signatures. The scanners were very advanced. They could see through any material. They read DNA patterns and brain activity. They measured heartbeats and blood flow. The Zephyrians wanted to understand everything about these mysterious humans, but the moment those alien scanners touched the Dakota, something terrible began to happen. Deep inside the ship's computer systems, old programs woke up from their sleep. These were not normal computer programs. They were designed for one purpose only: to detect when aliens tried to scan human biology. Warning lights began to flash throughout the ship. A low alarm began to sound. It was not loud yet, but every human on board knew what it meant. Morrison stood up from his chair. His face became hard as stone. "Battle stations," he said in a calm voice. "We have been probed." Lisa Grant's hands moved to her weapons. "Confirmed, Captain. Biological scanners are penetrating our hull. Unknown alien technology." Tony Blake's voice came from the engineering station. "Captain, Protocol Omega-7 is activating automatically." Morrison nodded once. Protocol Omega-7 was something most humans hoped they would never see. It was designed for the worst possible situation. When aliens tried to scan human biology without permission, it meant they might be planning to create biological weapons. On the Zephyrian ship, Veltar watched his screens with delight. The scans were working perfectly. He could see the humans moving around inside their ship. There were about 200 of them. They looked mostly like the pictures he had seen, but seeing them alive was amazing. "Look at this data," he said to his crew. "Their muscle density is incredible, and their bone structure, it is designed for a world with much stronger gravity than we thought." Colvin studied the readings with worry. "Commander, their stress hormones are rising rapidly. I think they know we are scanning them." Veltar laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Impossible. Our stealth technology is perfect. They cannot detect us." But even as he spoke, something changed on the human ship. The Dakota, which had been drifting quietly through space, suddenly came alive. Its engines began to glow. Weapon ports opened along its hull, like the eyes of a waking predator. "Commander," Solara said with panic in her voice, "they are powering weapons. We should leave now." Veltar finally felt the first touch of fear, but he was a scientist first. His curiosity was stronger than his fear. "Continue the scans. We are so close to understanding them." Inside the Dakota, Morrison walked to the center of the bridge. His crew moved with the smooth precision of a machine built for war. Every person knew their job. Every weapon was ready. "Amy, try to contact them," Morrison ordered. "Tell them they have 30 seconds to identify themselves and explain why. They are scanning our ship." Amy's fingers moved over her controls. She sent the message in every language the humans knew, but there was no reply from the hidden alien ship. Morrison waited exactly 30 seconds. Then he turned to Carl Johnson. "Mr. Johnson, you may fire when ready." Carl smiled for the first time that day. It was not a pleasant smile. "Yes, sir." Target acquired. The USS Dakota's main guns began to charge with energy that could melt asteroids. The first blast from the Dakota's guns lit up the dark space like a small sun. The energy beam struck exactly where the Zephyrian ship was hiding. Their stealth systems failed instantly. The contemplation of stars appeared on everyone's screens, its hull glowing red from the heat. "Impossible," Veltar whispered as his ship shook around him. How did they see through our stealth? His crew scrambled to their emergency stations. Silara worked frantically at the damage control station. Hull breach, on deck 7. Our stealth generators are destroyed. We are completely visible now. Colvin looked up from his station with terror in his large black eyes. Commander, they are launching smaller ships. Dozens of them, on the Dakotas. Bridge, Morrison watched his tactical display with satisfaction. Fighter ships poured out of his vessel's launch bays like angry insects. Each fighter was piloted by a human who had trained their whole life for combat. Lisa, status report, Morrison said calmly. Lisa Grant studied her screens. Direct hit on their stealth systems. The alien ship is damaged but still flying. Our fighters are moving to surround them. Good, Amy. Are they trying to communicate now? Amy shook her head. Nothing, Captain. Complete radio silence. Face showed no emotion. Then they are not interested in talking. Tony, bring our main weapons to full power. Prepare the hunters. Tony Blake's hands moved over his controls. Deep in the ship's belly, terrible machines began to wake up. The hunters were not human. They were artificial intelligences built for one purpose, to track down and destroy alien ships that threatened humans. Hunters are online, Captain Tony reported. They are asking for permission to begin the chase. Morrison nodded. Permission granted. Release them. From hidden ports on the Dakota's hull, small black objects shot out into space. They looked like metal spiders with glowing red eyes. These were the hunters. Once they locked onto a target, they would follow it anywhere in the galaxy. On the Zephyrian ship, the crew watched in horror as the hunter machines spread out around them. The hunters moved in patterns that made no sense to alien minds. They seemed to dance through space, but every movement brought them closer to their target. What are those things? Silara asked with fear. Veltar had no answer. In all his years of studying other races, he had never seen anything like the hunters. They moved like living creatures, but his scanners said they were machines. Commander, we need to run, Colvin said. Our ship cannot fight something like this. For the first time since the attack began, Veltar agreed with his crew. Set course for home. Maximum speed. The contemplation of stars turned away from the human warship and began to accelerate. Its engines glowed bright blue as it tried to escape, but the hunters were faster. They caught up with the fleeing ship in seconds. The first hunter attached itself to the Zephyrian hull with metal claws. Then it began to cut through the armor like it was soft cheese. Sparks flew as the machine worked its way inside the ship. Hull breach, Silara screamed. Something is cutting through our outer armor. More hunters attached themselves to different parts of the ship. Each one began cutting in a different place. They worked with mechanical precision, making holes just big enough for them to crawl through. Inside the Dakota, Morrison watched the hunt with cold satisfaction. He had seen this many times before. The hunters would disable the alien ship without destroying it completely. Then his Marines would board it and capture anyone still alive. Captain, Amy said suddenly, I am receiving a transmission. From the alien ship. No, sir. From Admiral Parker at Fleet Command. Morrison frowned. Admiral Parker only called during emergencies. Put him through. The main screen changed to show an older man with gray hair and hard eyes. Admiral Steve. Parker had been fighting aliens for 30 years. He was one of the most feared humans in the galaxy. Jake, the Admiral said. We detected your engagement with an unknown vessel. What is your status? We caught them scanning our ship without permission, Admiral. They tried to run when we opened fire. The hunters are bringing them in now. Admiral Parker nodded. Good work, but I have bad news. Our deep space sensors show that this ship is not alone. There are at least 15 other alien vessels spread across 3 star systems. They all belong to the same race. Morrison felt something cold move through his chest. A coordinated scanning operation. That is what it looks like. They may have been mapping our military strengths for months. Jake, this could be preparation for an invasion. On the screen, Morrison could see the Admiral's staff working frantically behind him. Red warning lights flashed throughout the Fleet Command Center. This was not a simple first contact situation anymore. What are your orders, Admiral? Protocol Omega-7 is now in full effect for the entire sector. All human ships are to consider this race a clear and present danger to our species. You are authorized to use any means necessary to stop them. Morrison understood. Protocol Omega-7 meant total war. No prisoners unless they surrendered completely. No mercy for anyone who threatened human survival. Understood, Admiral. What? About the ship we are capturing. Question the survivors. Find out everything about their race, their technology, their home worlds. Then send that information to all human fleets in the sector. The connection ended. Morrison turned to his crew. Every person on the bridge was looking at him with the same expression. They all knew what Protocol Omega-7 meant. Lisa, contact the Nevada and the Montana. Tell Captain Brooks and Captain Stone to prepare for deep space operations. Yes, sir. How many ships should we request? Morrison thought for a moment. All of them. Every human warship in the sector. If these aliens want to study us, we will. Give them a lesson they will never forget. Outside the Dakota, the hunter machines had finished their work. The Zephyrian ship was dead in space, its engines destroyed, and its weapons offline. Human fighter ships surrounded it like wolves around wounded prey. Inside the contemplation of stars, Veltar and his crew huddled together in their damaged bridge. The air was getting thin because of all the holes in their hull. Several crew members were injured from the explosions. Commander, Colvin whispered. What have we done? Veltar had no answer. His simple scientific mission had somehow turned into a nightmare. The humans had attacked them with weapons he could not understand. Now strange machines were crawling through his ship like metal insects. We were just studying them, Sil said through her tears. We never meant any harm. Before Veltar could reply, a new sound filled the ship. It was the sound of metal being cut open. The humans were coming aboard. The first human marine to enter the Zephyrian bridge was a tall woman in black armor. Her helmet covered her face, but her movements showed she was a professional soldier. Behind her came 5 more marines, all carrying weapons that hummed with energy. The lead marine pointed her weapon at Veltar. When she spoke, her voice came through a translator device. You are prisoners of the Human Defense Force. Any movement will be considered an act of aggression. Do you understand? Veltar raised his long hands to show he was not armed. We understand. But please, there has been a mistake. We are scientists. We meant no harm. The marine's helmet turned toward him, even though he could not see her face. Veltar felt like she was studying him the way he had studied the humans, but her attention felt different. It felt like a predator looking at prey. Scanning our ship without permission is an act of war, according to human law, the marine said. You are lucky we decided to take prisoners. Act of war. Veltar's voice cracked with fear. But we were just curious about your species. We study everyone we meet. The marine was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke again, and her voice was colder than the space between stars. Not anymore. You don't. Back on the Dakota, Morrison received reports from his boarding teams. The aliens were cooperative but confused. They seemed to think their scanning was a normal thing to do. They had no idea why the humans were so angry. Morrison walked to the window and looked out at the damaged alien ship. Soon, other human warships would arrive. The Nevada and Montana were already on their way. Behind them would come the entire sector fleet. These aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had tried to study humans without permission. Now they would learn why the galaxy feared the species from Earth. Morrison smiled. But it was not a kind smile. The hunt was just beginning. 3 hours after the capture of the Contemplation of Stars, the first reinforcements arrived. The USS Nevada dropped out of hyperspace with its weapons already charged. Captain Helen Brooks was known throughout the fleet as someone who never showed mercy to enemies. Morrison watched the Nevada take position next to his ship. Soon after, the USS Montana appeared with Captain Rick Stone commanding. More ships followed. Within 6 hours, 12 human warships floated in the dark space around the captured Zephyrian vessel. In the Dakota's main conference room, Morrison met with his senior officers. The room was simple and clean, with metal walls and bright lights. A large table sat in the center, where the humans could plan their next moves. Lisa Grant spread out star charts on the table. Red dots marked the locations of other Zephyrian ships. Intelligence reports 15 confirmed contacts across 3 systems. They have been scanning our trade routes and military bases for months. Tony Blake added his own information. Our computer experts have broken into their ship's databases. These aliens call themselves Zephyrians. They have been studying dozens of other species without permission. What did they learn about us? Morrison asked. Everything, Amy Rodriguez said quietly. They know our ship designs, our population numbers, even our DNA patterns. They have detailed maps of our major colonies. Morrison felt anger building in his chest. The aliens had been spying on humanity for months. They knew exactly how to hurt humans if they wanted to start a war. Have we questioned the prisoners yet? Carl Johnson nodded. I spoke with their commander Veltar. He still claims they are peaceful scientists. He says they study every race they meet. Do you believe him? Carl's face was hard as stone. I believe he thinks he is telling the truth. But it does not matter what he intended. What matters is what he accomplished. Any enemy could use the information they gathered to destroy us. Morrison stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the damaged Zephyrian ship surrounded by human vessels. Each human ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Bring Commander Veltar to me, Morrison ordered. I want to speak with him myself. 20 minutes later, guards brought Veltar into the conference room. The alien looked much smaller now than he had on his own ship. His blue skin was pale, with fear, and his large black eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. Morrison studied the alien for a long moment. Veltar was tall and thin, with delicate features that showed he had never been in a real fight. His clothes were torn from the battle, and bandages covered cuts on his arms. Sit down, Morrison said, pointing to a chair. Veltar sat carefully, as if he was afraid the chair might hurt him. Captain Morrison, I want you to know that we never meant to cause trouble. My people are scientists. We only wanted to learn about your species. By sneaking around our space and scanning our ships without permission, we thought our stealth systems would prevent any problems. We have studied hundreds of species this way. No one has ever objected before. Morrison leaned forward. Let me explain something to you, Commander. Humans have a very simple rule about biological scanning. Anyone who scans our bodies without permission is planning to hurt us. We have learned this from experience. Veltar's eyes grew even wider. But that is not true. We would never hurt anyone. We are a peaceful people. Maybe you are peaceful, Morrison said. But the information you gathered could be used by others who are not peaceful. You have detailed scans of human biology. Someone could use that data to create diseases that only kill humans. We would never give our research to anyone who might use it to cause harm. Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You will not have the chance to give it to anyone, Commander. Your people made a mistake when they decided to study us. Before Veltar could ask what Morrison meant, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Amy Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system. Captain, to the bridge immediately. We have a problem. Morrison left Veltar with the guards and rushed to the bridge. When he arrived, he found his crew staring at their screens with expressions of shock. Report, Morrison ordered. Lisa Grant, turned from her station. "Captain, we just received a message from Admiral Parker. The Zephyrian home fleet is mobilizing. 50 ships are heading toward the border of human space." Morrison felt his blood turn cold. "Are they attacking us?" "Unknown, sir. But they are demanding the immediate release of the Contemplation of Stars and her crew. They claim we attacked them without cause." Tony Blake looked up from his engineering station. "Captain, there is more. Our deep space scanners are picking up Zephyrian ships in 7 different systems now. They are not just studying us anymore. They are surrounding human space." Morrison walked to his command chair and sat down slowly. The situation had changed completely. What started as a simple scanning incident was now looking like preparation for war. "Amy, open a channel to Admiral Parker." "Channel open, sir." Admiral Parker appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Morrison could see dozens of staff officers working frantically. The Fleet Command Center looked like a place preparing for battle. "Jake, what is your status?" "We have the alien commander in custody, Admiral, but his people are mobilizing their entire fleet. It looks like they want their ship back." Admiral Parker's face was grim. "It is worse than that, Jake. We have reports coming in from all over human space. Zephyrian ships are appearing near our colonies. They are not attacking yet, but they are clearly positioning themselves for something." Morrison understood. The Zephyrians thought they could pressure humans into releasing their people by threatening human worlds. They had no idea what they were really doing. "Admiral, request permission to begin Phase 2 operations." Permission granted. All human fleets are authorized to engage any Zephyrian vessel that does not immediately surrender. No warnings, no negotiations. The connection ended. Morrison turned to his crew. Every person on the bridge knew what Phase 2 meant. It was total war against an entire species. "Lisa, transmit our attack coordinates to all ships in the fleet. We are going hunting." "Yes, sir. All ships report, ready for combat operations." Morrison stood up and walked to the center of the bridge. Around him, his crew prepared for battle with the smooth efficiency of professionals. These humans had fought many wars against many enemies. They knew how to turn their anger into victory. "Attention all ships," Morrison said into his communication device. "This is Captain Morrison of the USS Dakota. The Zephyrian species has been scanning human biology without permission for months. They have detailed information about our people that could be used to create biological weapons. Under Protocol Omega-7, they are now classified as an extinction-level threat to humanity." He paused to let his words sink in. On 12 different ships, hundreds of human warriors listened to their orders. "Our mission is simple. Find every Zephyrian ship in human space and destroy it. Find every Zephyrian base and eliminate it. Show them what happens when someone tries to study humanity without permission." Morrison's voice grew harder as he continued. "The aliens thought we would be easy to understand. They thought they could scan us like animals in a zoo. They were wrong. Today, they learn why the galaxy fears us." In the conference room, Veltar heard the alarms and felt his ship shake as the human fleet began to move. He did not understand the human language, but he could feel something terrible was beginning. The guards who watched him had changed. Before, they had treated him like a prisoner. Now they looked at him like he was something dangerous that needed to be destroyed. One of the guards, a young human woman, spoke to him through the translator. "Your people have made a big mistake, alien. You should have stayed away from us." Veltar tried to speak, but no words came out. He was starting to understand that his simple scientific mission had somehow started a war that his peaceful people were not prepared to fight. Outside the conference room, the USS Dakota and her sister ships began their deadly work. The hunt for the Zephyrian species had officially begun. The war against the Zephyrians lasted exactly 72 hours. It was not really a war at all. It was more like an extermination. The human fleets moved through space like hunting packs. They found Zephyrian research ships hiding in asteroid fields and destroyed them in minutes. They tracked down Zephyrian bases on distant moons and turned them into glowing craters. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Dakota and watched the tactical displays. Red dots showed Zephyrian positions. One by one, the red dots disappeared as human weapons found their targets. "Report," Morrison ordered. Lisa Grant read from her screens. 17 Zephyrian vessels destroyed in the last 6 hours. No survivors. The Nevada reports, successful. Elimination of a research base on Kepler 44 to B. The Montana has destroyed 3 ships trying to escape toward the Galactic Rim. Tony Blake added his own information. Our computer warfare division has successfully hacked into the Zephyrian communication network. We are intercepting all their messages. They are trying to recall their ships, but most cannot receive the warnings in time. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. The humans were not just winning the battle. They were demonstrating their complete superiority over the aliens who had dared to study them. Any word from their government? Amy Rodriguez looked up from her station. "Yes, sir. The Zephyrian High Council is trying to communicate with Fleet Command. They want to negotiate a ceasefire." "What did Admiral Parker tell them?" "He told them that humans do not negotiate with species that conduct biological warfare research against us." Morrison smiled coldly. The Zephyrians still did not understand what they had done wrong. They thought their scanning was harmless science. They could not see how it looked from the human perspective. On Zephyria Prime, the Zephyrian homeworld, elder scientist Mordok stood in the council chamber and tried to make sense of the disaster. Around him, other council members argued and shouted at each other in panic. "How could this have happened?" asked council member Yelenara. "We have been studying other species for centuries. No one has ever reacted this way." Mordok was the oldest living Zephyrian. He had seen many changes in the galaxy during his long life, but he had never seen anything like the fury of the humans. "The humans are different," he said quietly. "Our intelligence reports were wrong about them. They are not like other species." Another council member, Zarketh, waved his arms in frustration. "Different? How? They are just another species. They cannot be that powerful." Mordok walked to the great window that looked out over their beautiful city. Zephyria Prime was a world of crystal towers and floating gardens. It was a place built by people who loved knowledge and beauty. It was not a place built for war. "Look at the reports from our ships," Mordok said sadly. "The humans did not just attack us. They hunted us. Their weapons are designed to cause maximum destruction. Their tactics show they have been planning for wars like this for a very long time. But we can fight back," Zarketh insisted. "We have ships and weapons too." Mordok shook his head. "Our ships are built for exploration and research. Their ships are built for killing. Our weapons are designed to disable enemies so we can study them. Their weapons are designed to destroy enemies completely." The truth was becoming clear to all of them. The Zephyrians had never fought a real war. They had never needed to. Every species they had met before was peaceful like them. The humans were something entirely different. "What can we do?" asked Yelenara. Mordok was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke the words that no Zephyrian leader had ever spoken before. "We surrender. We surrender completely and hope they will show us mercy." Back on the Dakota, Morrison received the surrender message from the Zephyrian government. He read it carefully while his senior officers waited for his decision. The message was simple. The Zephyrian High Council formally surrenders to the human forces. "We offer complete submission in exchange for the survival of our species. We will accept any terms you require." Morrison looked up at his officers. "What do you think?" Carl Johnson spoke first. "They could be lying. This could be a trick to make us stop our attacks while they prepare defenses." Lisa Grant disagreed. "Our intelligence reports show they have no military forces left. We have destroyed every armed ship they had. They cannot fight anymore, even if they wanted to." Tony Blake had been studying the technical data from the captured Zephyrian ship. Captain, I have been analyzing their technology. These aliens, really, are scientists first? Their ships have amazing sensors and computers, but their weapons are almost useless. They never expected to fight anyone. Morrison walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire alien civilization was waiting to learn if humans would let them live or die. Amy, open a channel to Admiral Parker. Channel. Open, sir. Admiral Parker appeared on the screen. He looked tired. The past 3 days had been busy ones for the human fleet. Jake, I assume you have seen the surrender message. Yes, Admiral. What are your orders? Admiral Parker was quiet for a moment. Behind him, Morrison could see other officers working at their stations. The war might be over, but there was still much work to do. The President has made a decision, Admiral Parker said finally. We will accept their surrender, but with conditions. Very strict conditions. Morrison nodded. What kind of conditions? First, all Zephyrian scanning technology will be destroyed. They will never be allowed to study other species again without written permission from those species. Understood. Second, any Zephyrian who is involved in scanning humans will be exiled from their home world. They will live the rest of their lives in human prison colonies. Morrison thought about Commander Veltar sitting in his conference room. The alien scientist would never see his home again. Third, Admiral Parker continued, the Zephyrian government will pay tribute to humanity for the next 50 years. Food, raw materials, whatever we need. And if they refuse these terms, Admiral Parker's face became hard as stone. If they refuse, we complete the extermination. Every Zephyrian in the galaxy dies. The connection ended. Morrison turned to his crew. They had won a complete victory. The aliens, who had dared to study humans without permission, were now at humanity's mercy. Lisa, transmit the surrender terms to the Zephyrian government. Tell them they have 1 hour to accept. Yes, sir. Morrison sat down in his command chair and waited. Around him, his crew continued their work with quiet efficiency. The war was almost over, but the lesson would last forever. 1 hour later, the Zephyrian reply came back. It was even shorter than their surrender message. We accept all terms. Please do not destroy us. Morrison smiled. Another alien species had learned why humans were feared throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians had thought they could study humanity like insects under a microscope. Instead, they had discovered that humans were the ones with the magnifying glass, and sometimes, humans used that magnifying glass to burn things. In the conference room, Veltar felt the ship stop shaking. The alarms had gone quiet. Through his translator, he heard one of the guards talking to another. War's over, the guard said. We won. Veltar closed his large black eyes and tried not to cry. He had started this disaster with his curiosity about the mysterious humans. Now his entire species would pay the price for his mistake. He had wanted to study the humans. Now he understood that some things in the galaxy should never be studied. Some things were too dangerous to examine closely. The humans were one of those things. 6 months after the war ended, Commander Sarah Kim sat in her office at Human Strategic Intelligence. The office was small and plain, with gray walls and a simple metal desk. But from this room, Sarah controlled spy networks that reached across the entire galaxy. She was reading reports from her agents when her assistant knocked on the door. Come in, Sarah said without looking up. A young man entered carrying a datapad. Ma'am, you asked for the final report on Operation Looking Glass. Sarah took the pad and smiled. Operation Looking Glass was the code name for what the rest of the galaxy called the Zephyrian War. But Sarah knew the truth. It had never been a war at all. It had been a carefully planned trap. Excellent work, Lieutenant Davis, she said. Send my compliments to all the teams involved. After the young man left, Sarah opened the classified files on her computer. The real story of Operation Looking Glass was something that very few humans would ever know. It had started 2 years ago, when human intelligence discovered that the Zephyrians were mapping human space. Their scanning ships had been visiting human colonies and trade routes for months. They were gathering the kind of detailed information that could only be used for planning an invasion. But the Zephyrians were not planning to invade. Sarah's agents had learned that much quickly. The aliens really were scientists. They studied other species because they were curious, not because they wanted to hurt anyone. This created a problem for human leadership. The Zephyrians were not enemies, but they were gathering information that real enemies could use. Their detailed scans of human biology could help someone create diseases that only killed humans. Their maps of human space could help invaders find the best targets. Sarah had proposed a solution that was both simple and terrible. Give the Zephyrians a target they could not resist. Let them scan a human warship and make it look like an accident. Then use their attack as an excuse to destroy their entire civilization. The USS Dakota had been chosen carefully. Captain Morrison and his crew were some of the best warriors in the human fleet. They would make the trap look real. The Zephyrians would never suspect that they were being led into a carefully planned ambush. Sarah opened another file and read the psychological profile of Commander Veltar. The alien scientist was exactly the kind of person they needed for the plan. He was curious, stubborn, and naive. He would scan the human ship even if his crew advised against it. Everything had worked perfectly. The Zephyrians took the bait and scanned the Dakota. The humans responded with overwhelming force. In just 3 days, an entire alien civilization was brought to its knees. But the real victory was not military. It was psychological. Every alien species in the galaxy had watched the destruction of the They had seen what happened to anyone who tried to study humans without permission. Sarah opened her communication system and called Admiral Parker. Admiral, this is Colonel Kim. I have the final assessment of Operation Looking Glass. Admiral. Parker's face appeared on her screen. He looked older than he had 6 months ago, even for a professional soldier. The destruction of an entire species was not easy to watch. What is your conclusion, Sarah? Complete success, sir. Intelligence reports show that 12 different alien species have stopped their surveillance operations in human space. The Andromedans have recalled all their scout ships. The Centauri Federation has banned biological scanning of humans. Even the Galactic Trade Union has issued new regulations protecting human privacy. Admiral Parker nodded slowly. What about the Zephyrians themselves? Sarah pulled up another report. They are following all the surrender terms exactly. Their scanning technology has been destroyed. The scientists who were involved in studying us have been exiled to prison colonies. Their government is paying tribute on schedule. Any signs of rebellion or resistance? None, sir. Their spirit is completely broken. They will never threaten anyone again. Admiral Parker was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I wonder if we went too far, Sarah. They really were just scientists. Sarah's voice became colder. Scientists who could have gotten every human in the galaxy killed. Admiral, if their research had fallen into the wrong hands, we could have faced extinction. We did what was necessary to protect our species. I know, but the cost. The cost was paid by them, not by us. That is what victory means. After the call ended, Sarah returned to her reports. There was always more work to do. The galaxy was full of alien species who might threaten humanity. Her job was to find them before they could cause problems. She opened a file about a new species called the Vortakians. They were traitors who had been asking too many questions about human technology. Perhaps it was time to arrange another accident that would teach them proper respect. On Zephyria Prime, elder scientist Mordock stood in what used to be the Grand Library. The beautiful building was almost empty now. Most of the books and research data had been destroyed according to the surrender terms. Young Zephyrians walked through the empty halls with downcast eyes. They had been raised to believe that knowledge was the most important thing in the universe. Now they were forbidden from seeking knowledge about other species. Mordok's assistant, a female named Pelvia, approached him carefully. "Elder, the human inspector is here for the monthly check." Mordok sighed. Every month, human officials visited Zephyria Prime to make sure they were following the surrender terms. The inspectors were always polite, but firm. They made it clear that any violation would mean complete destruction. "Send him to my office," Mordok said. "I will meet with him." The human inspector was a middle-aged man named Robert Chen. He was not a soldier, but Mordok could see the hardness in his eyes that all humans seemed to have. Even their diplomats were warriors at heart. "Elder Mordok," Robert said politely, "I need to review your compliance reports." Mordok handed over the datapads that showed how his people were following human orders. All scanning equipment destroyed. All research on other species ended. All tribute payments made on time. Robert examined the reports carefully. "Very good. Your people continue to follow the agreement perfectly." "We have no choice," Mordok said, quietly. "You made it clear what would happen if we disobeyed." Robert looked up from the reports. For a moment, his expression became almost sympathetic. "Elder, may I speak frankly?" "Of course. My government knows that your people meant no harm when you scanned our ships. We understand that you were motivated by scientific curiosity, not aggression." Mordok felt a small spark of hope. Then perhaps the terms of our surrender could be reviewed, perhaps made less harsh. Robert shook his head. "I'm afraid not. You see, Elder, the problem was never your intentions. The problem was your actions. You gathered information that could be used to destroy humanity. In our experience, such information always falls into the wrong hands eventually. But we would never have given our research to anyone who wished to harm you. You say that now, but what about in 50 years? What about in 100 years? Governments change, Elder. People change. The only way to be completely safe was to make sure you could never gather such information again." Mordok understood. The humans had not punished the Zephyrians for what they had done. They had punished them for what they might do in the future. It was a level of caution that bordered on paranoia. But perhaps, Mordok thought, that paranoia was why humans had survived when so many other species had not. Robert finished his inspection and prepared to leave. At the door, he turned back to Mordok. "Elder, there is one more thing you should know. The story of what happened to your people has spread throughout the galaxy. Other species have learned from your example. They know now that humans will not tolerate being studied without permission. Is that supposed to comfort me?" Robert's expression was unreadable. "It should. Your sacrifice has prevented other species from making the same mistake. In a way, you have saved lives by losing your freedom." After the inspector left, Mordok sat alone in his empty office. Through the window, he could see Zephyrian children playing in the crystal gardens. They would grow up in a world where curiosity was dangerous. They would learn to look at the stars and wonder about other species, but they would never be allowed to seek answers. It was, Mordok realized, a kind of living death for a people who had devoted their entire culture to learning and discovery, but they were still alive. That was more than could be said for many species who had opposed humanity over the years. Across the galaxy, in dozens of different star systems, alien leaders sat in their council chambers and told themselves the same thing. They looked at the empty space where Zephyrian ships used to patrol, and they remembered the lesson. Never probe a human warship, never study humanity without permission, never give humans a reason to believe you might threaten them. The galaxy had learned to fear the species from Earth, and in the cold darkness between the stars, human ships continued their patrols, watching and waiting for the next species that might need to be taught proper respect. The lesson was simple, and it was written in the ashes of Zephyrian dreams. In a universe full of predators, humans were the apex hunters. They might look like any other species from a distance, but get too close, try to study them too carefully, and you would learn the truth. Humans were not just another species to be catalogued and understood. They were Deathworlders who had turned survival into an art form. They had learned to see threats everywhere because threats really were everywhere, and when threatened, they did not just fight back. They eliminated the threat completely, utterly, and forever. That was the final lesson of Operation Looking Glass. That was why Commander Sarah Kim smiled as she planned the next accident that would teach another alien species to fear humanity. The galaxy was a dangerous place, but for humans, it was becoming a little safer every day.